I was born in 1917. My grandmother had 20 acres of land up there, all cleaned up. My grandfather and my grandmother, the house joined together, both got water out of the same spring. Said, I'm not using town water. I was smart as y'all. I caught my own water.
Up here, the water above the bridge was pristine clean. That was beautiful. You could see the bottom practically all the time. And in back of me is an old swimming hole called the Mullet Hole, where we swam. We were children, and some of us weren't children, swam there till 1942. And we would spend the day, many, many days when we weren't in school or working, spend the day here like a day at the beach. Wonderful times, wonderful times. We always felt like God made that place for fish and children.
When we were little, we really had a lot of fun down here on the river. All of the kids did. We would fish, ice skate, and in the spring, starting with the fishing, we would dip herring, and you could dip up a whole big net full and you could hardly even lift it out of the water. You could catch the crappie. I think it was a limit of 25. You could catch it almost in a half hour. As soon as you dropped your line over, you could have a crappie. And in fact, we very seldom ever stayed home or in the house because there was so much to do. There was so much to do when you were little, you wouldn't believe. I just love this town anyway.
I came into Occoquan in 1938. And then they used to have the baptizing down at the river. And they would walk from the church down there. And it seemed like to me the women or the girls, they would have on something white when they was baptized. The minister, he would be in the water and they would lead them out to him. And then my wife's brother, he had his boat there that if it was too far, he would row them out to the minister, then they'd baptize.
National security is about protecting the resources that are most essential to human life. And there's perhaps no more resource that is more important or essential to human life than water. And today in the world we are facing a crisis with regard to the allocation and the distribution of water that has to be addressed as a national security issue. There is something that can be done about this. This is not a call to panic. It's really a call to reason for local governments and local communities to look at the issue of water, to project ahead, to look at how their development projects are going to increase populations.
The metropolitan Washington area depends upon a secure, clean water supply, and the Occoquan Reservoir in Northern Virginia is the most dependable water source in the region. But the Occoquan is also the most urbanized drinking water supply watershed in the United States, and the only major U.S. drinking supply that depends on the release of treated wastewater into the reservoir. This unique system resulted from unprecedented changes in Northern Virginia. Up to the 1940s, the population of the watershed was small. 590 square miles of hills and valleys in Northern Virginia provided clean stream and groundwater to the Occoquan River. Following World War II, everything changed. Rapid population growth increased the need for water. Springs, streams, and wells dried up or became polluted. In response, Fairfax County bought the Occoquan Reservoir from a private water company and created the Fairfax County Water Authority.
The Fairfax County Water Authority was founded in September 1957. We were authorized by the State Corporation Commission at the request of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. The board realized that in post-World War II Fairfax County, the coming growth could not be adequately served for their water needs by the existing several independent water suppliers. So they decided to establish a comprehensive system that could serve those needs. The authority is devoted to meeting the unrestricted water supply demands of our customers. The Fairfax County Water Authority and our over 1 million Northern Virginia customers are the primary beneficiaries of the Occoquan watershed as it feeds into the Occoquan Reservoir. We are extremely interested in preserving that watershed so that it can deliver into our reservoir the cleanest water possible.
The first use of the Occoquan watershed for public water supply was in the 1950s when a low-head reservoir was developed by the Virginia American Water Company to serve the needs of the city of Alexandria. In later years, the reservoir was, as we know it today, was constructed with a high dam located just upstream of the town of Occoquan. That reservoir impounds about 8 billion gallons and is today owned by the Fairfax County Water Authority. In the late 1960s, at a point when the reservoir was only about 10 or 12 years old, it was beginning to experience some rather severe water quality problems as a result of human activity taking place in the watershed upstream of the reservoir. It was necessary to consider the impact of domestic wastewater on the quality of the waters of the Occoquan Reservoir, which is an irreplaceable drinking water source for the region.
I was associated with the State Water Control Board during the development of its Occoquan policy in the late 60s. And subsequently, in 1974, I became the first executive director of the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority.
The State Water Control Board threatened a moratorium on new development in the watershed if Fairfax and Prince William counties could not provide a reliable, clean water supply. 11 small sewage plants were discharging ineffectively treated wastewater into streams that drained into the reservoir. 2 solutions were proposed.
One was to construct a regional wastewater collection system, provide secondary treatment, and export all of the effluent to the Potomac River. And the second alternative was to limit the population growth in the watershed and construct an advanced waste treatment plant taking advantage of maximum available technology to treat the water and return it to the reservoir.
The solution that was ultimately adopted was to build a state-of-the-art water reclamation facility at a scale that had never before been attempted in the United States or the world for that matter. Because of the newness of this concept, reclaiming domestic wastewater and using it to supplement public water supply, the regulatory agencies involved and the jurisdictions of Northern Virginia felt it was important to have an independent entity in place to evaluate the success of this new treatment scheme in supplementing water supply and also protecting the raw water source that was operated by the Fairfax County Water Authority. The Occoquan Watershed Monitoring Laboratory was the entity established by the Occoquan policy. We're actually part of the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department of the College of Engineering at Virginia Tech. Our laboratory has been here in Manassas since 1972 and has served to develop a long-term water quality record of water quality in the reservoir and also of the performance of the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority water reclamation plant. Our studies have ranged from maintenance of a time series of water quality in the reservoir to testing the performance of various management practices for the control of agricultural and urban runoff, to participating in studies of advanced wastewater treatment practices with the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority.
Plant operation began in June 1978, and the treatment facility met all of its performance parameters on the first day of discharge. I am very pleased to say that the plant has continued to meet all of its performance parameters for the past 24 years, during which time I served all but the last 2 as its executive director. The UOSA plant has undergone several expansions, beginning with its initial capacity of 10.9 million gallons a day to its current capacity of 32 million gallons a day. And construction is in progress to expand the plant capacity to 54 million gallons a day.
In the 1960s, less than 2 million gallons per day of ineffectively treated wastewater led to undrinkable reservoir water. Today, up to 30 million gallons of highly treated wastewater is discharged daily just above the reservoir. This discharge is critical to maintain a clean, plentiful water supply. Expansive residential development in Prince William and Fairfax County would not have been possible without the use of treated wastewater. With no other new source of water available and continuing population growth and water needs, increased discharges from the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority are now critical to a secure water supply.
This is the last of the great Piedmont forest that must have covered a huge area. There are 16,000 acres out there now, and this is a very, very important part of Fauquier County because water is going to be the most important thing in the future for us because all the water that we have in this county rises within the boundaries of the county. No stream comes across our boundaries, and so we are absolutely dependent on the water in the county now. And I've lived for 78 years on Cedar Run, and I've spent about 50 of those years trying to protect it and the countryside that drains into it. And I feel it's of tremendous importance for the people who live downstream and depend upon this water for their lives, really. The mountain that over here is Wildcat Mountain. Over here are the watery mountains, here are the Pignut Mountains, and over behind me are the Bull Run Mountains. I'm standing on the ridge that separates the Cedar Run watershed from the Broad Run watershed. Both these streams come together to form the Occoquan River. And when I pour the water in this hand, it will go into the Cedar Run watershed. And on this side, the water I'm pouring on this side will go into the Broad Run. And they will meet, this water will meet miles downstream to form the Occoquan River. Behind me, you see a perfect example of the farmland of Fauquier County that is protected really by the hills and the wooded hills. When I moved to the place I'm living in here, which is in a glade on this mountainside, I have mountain woods on one side and fields on the other. And where the open fields are, when we have the tremendous rains, the water comes down in 3 streams that I think I could almost come down on an inner tube. And on the other side, where the wooded hill is, the water doesn't come down at all. It comes, I'm totally unaware of water coming off the steep mountainsides. This is one of the 2 headwaters of Cedar Run. The other headwater is about a quarter of a mile over in the hills. And this flows down from here down into this pond, which I think is probably the highest pond in the Occoquan watershed.
"15 miles away, Bull Run Mountain is also a Springfield source. The famous stream was the site of 2 critical Civil War battles over 140 years ago. Today, another civil battle is being fought at Bull Run. Should this stream area be deforested and developed for new homes, roads, and shopping centers? Or should the forested and rural area be preserved? A delicate community of native plants and animals that supports the natural production of clean water from these mountains is vanishing as new development encroaches. Some plants are the last of their species in the watershed.
I conducted a study of community diversity in the Bull Run Mountains that included many of these headwater streams. These are some of the headwaters of the Occoquan watershed. They begin as rainwater that filters through the soil and rocks of Bull Run Mountain and emerge as springs in the hollow bottoms. Having a large forested natural landscape buffers this process and is instrumental to keeping the waters clean. Clean headwaters also promote biological diversity at multiple scales, from insects in the stream to the plant and animal community of the stream bottom.
The Outdoor Lab is a 210-acre facility in Broad Run, Virginia. Every year, 9,000 Arlington County Public School students come to the lab as part of their science curriculum. Here they study water temperature, pH, and dissolved oxygen in Champs Pond and Tripp's Run, which feeds into Champs Pond. There are over 500 man-made ponds in the Occoquan watershed, and Champs Pond is one of them. The students not only study these objective measures of water quality, they also study the water for macroinvertebrates, or aquatic insects, as well as crawfish and other species that live in these waters. The children also use this facility for recreation as well, boating and fishing, something that they really cannot do in Arlington County. So in addition to learning science, the children have fun. And most of the time they will recall that this visit to the outdoor lab is the best experience they have in school.
Free-flowing, life-supporting streams surrounded by dense forests are fundamental for maintaining clean, drinkable water. Counting the number of insect larvae species in a streambed demonstrates the health of a stream. The more species you find, the healthier the water. These insects clean streams by eating excess organic matter in the water.
Fish fly is a predator in these streams, and will feed on other aquatic insects and even small fish and tadpoles. I know it's fish flies, and I believe hellgrammites as well, will lay their eggs on a branch that's overhanging the water. Really? And when the eggs hatch out, then the larvae drop into the water. Our flat-headed mayflies have gills along the side of their abdomen. This is another aquatic insect. Both this and the fish fly will emerge as flying adult insects. And then we have some crayfish. Some are detritivores eating dead organic material. Others are actually active predators. And we've got some damselflies, another aquatic insect, and you can see the three little paddle-like tails, and those are actually the gills for these animals. That's how they're getting their oxygen from the water. Another aquatic insect that'll become a flying adult. Some predaceous diving beetles, very fast, active swimming beetles. They actually carry a little bubble of air with them that they use as an air supply when they're going underwater, a little bit like a scuba diver. This is a crane fly, and in its immature stage, it's aquatic. Looks rather like a big caterpillar without legs or a head, and then undergoes this remarkable transformation into something that we more recognize as a fly. This one appears to be ovipositing. You can see that she's placing her tip of her abdomen against the stones and gravel here adjacent to the stream. They're moist, and perhaps she's laying eggs just out of the stream with the idea that as stream level rises, the eggs will become watered, and then the larvae will hatch out, and maybe this gives them a little bit of protection from any egg predators that might be in the stream before that happens. And we got some little tiny water striders. They are active predators. Both of these types of water striders are true bugs, and one of the characteristics of a true bug is that it has a piercing sucking mouth part, and it uses this piercing sucking mouth part to pierce the exoskeleton of another insect, one that gets trapped in the surface tension on the water, and it shoots in digestive juices into the body of its prey, which liquefies the insides, and then it sucks those juices back out. It's kind of a bug shake, if you will.
Some scientists test water quality by looking higher on the food chain. Stream-dwelling fish feed on insect larvae. Insects and fish die in unhealthy streams. The greater the number of species of fish, the healthier the stream water.
We started out and we were kind of surprised that there weren't a lot of fish. We weren't seeing a lot of fish, but the habitat is really shot right now. Once we did find some better habitat areas, we did find several species of fish. This guy right here is a cutlips minnow. It's one of our native fishes. Another fish that we found several of is this guy, the green sunfish. They're very pretty. They're probably one of the top level predators in this system. So we've got here two different species of sunfish. We've got a grain sunfish and a redbreast sunfish. The other fish that we've seen that I know about are black-nosed dace. That's a very common fish. It's kind of probably one of the more abundant fish in the system. We also saw some white suckers. Creek chub sucker is another fish that I don't typically see in Fairfax County streams. Another fish we saw some darters. I believe everyone we've seen so far are tessellated darters. Additionally, some other forage species we saw, the spot-tailed shiner and the crescent shiner. So that's just something that you typically see in a warm water stream in the Piedmonts.
3 out of 4 streams flowing into the Occoquan have no official names. The 92 streams with names reflect an era that has vanished. 15 streams are named after animals that inhabited their valleys: Beaver Creek, Cub Run, Elk Run, Wolf Run, Polecat Branch, Turkey Run, Owl Run, and Oxlick Run. 10 streams are named after once abundant trees and plant life: Cattail Branch, Piney Branch, Chestnut Lick Branch, Cedar Run, Walnut Branch, and Willow Springs Branch. 25 streams are named after former landowners: Johnny Moore Creek, Bull Run, Who's Run, Tom's Creek, Towser's Branch, Furs Run, and Trap Branch. 13 streams provide descriptive names: Little Rocky Run, Sandy Run, Flat Branch, Swift Run, and Dead Run. These names provide streams with a valid place in human experience, and efforts are underway to officially name more. Free-flowing streams are not the only water systems in the watershed that affect water quality in the reservoir. Over 500 ponds are dammed along the streams. 34 are large enough to be registered by the state. The oldest registered dam, built in 1928, is at Lake Jackson. The tallest is 72 feet tall and contains the drinking water supply for Manassas. The newest dam was built in 1976 to contain the treated wastewater from the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority. Each dam influences water flow, quality, and temperature, and the species of aquatic life. Dams also change the lives of neighbors. The high cost of dam building, as well as maintenance and environmental impacts, have brought the era of dam building to a near halt. In the 1930s, Clinton and Rue Purcell's father helped build Ryan's Dam to produce electricity for Prince William and Fairfax counties. The dam still exists, but is now covered with water backed up from a higher downstream dam.
I was born July the 23rd, 1919. I was born in this house. It was just a regular, good-sized stream running, you know. And then if it come a rain, a hard rain, well, it would get way up. But the average times you could walk right across. Well, after the dam was built, you couldn't walk across. You had to swim across or use a boat to get from one side to the other, or that swinging bridge, if you wanted to use that.
There was what we call like a boatswain chair, where they had a cable from trees from one side to the other, and that's the way they communicate from Fairfax to Prince William by the cable car. Just a few people, but not many, would use that cable car.
Today, drinking water for residents or agricultural farm animals is a principal reason for maintaining dams. The furthest upstream major water supply dam is on Cedar Run, near Warrenton in Fauquier County.
The original part of this house was built in 1814, and it has only been owned by two families since George III, the Blackwell family and my family. In 1922, my father bought it, and we still have it. We still live here. He bought it because of Cedar Run. It was, there are two streams that come into Cedar Run on this place, and so almost every field had running water in it. And so Cedar Run had played a great part in our lives. In 1961, the town condemned the land and paid us $100 an acre for 85 acres and took all of our running water. But it's beautiful to look at, but we can't use it. What you see in front of the house is the Warrenton Reservoir. There was the drinking water when it was put in 1961 for about 5,000 people. Now, I think there are now about 7,000 or 8,000 in Warrenton. But when my father bought it, what we saw was a field full of horses and cows and a lovely, lovely Cedar Run going through it. And down in the corner over there was the town swimming hole. It was called Blackwell's Hole because the Blackwell family who owned this place. And people used to come out from Warrenton, and we used to go down, and everybody swam there. And it was a very nice, lovely thing. And over here, Towser's Branch comes in, and over there, Taylor's Run comes in. And the three form this part of Cedar Run. And it was a considerable stream when you had all three of those streams meeting. But in 1961, the town, I suppose, very wisely decided that they had to do something about the water system. And it was good for the town, but very sad for us because we loved the stream and we had a wonderful time on it. And it was something that we didn't want to see happen, largely because they took all the water going through our boundaries, so that it meant that we had no more running water on the place except in one little stream on the other end. And having been the best watered farm in Fauquier County, it ended up being one of the worst. So that was not what we wanted, but for the larger good, I suppose it had to happen.
The city of Manassas draws its drinking water from Lake Manassas along Broad Run. Recently, growing population and industrial development prompted the city of Manassas to raise the height of that dam.
This is Broad Run, and that's Buckland Mill. My wife and I bought it about 16 years ago, and it's been there for over 200 years. The people who built mills 200 years ago had a pretty good eye for a stream. They could put a mill close enough to it to use the water power and yet build it so that it could withstand the highest floods that stream would produce. The Buckland Mill, you can see, has a stone foundation up to the point at which we're standing, and is wood above that. And that pretty much marks the exact level of the 100-year floodplain for Broad Run. And the mill has successfully withstood everything that's come down the river in the last 200 years. And what the floodplain does is allow the water to build up. It's all forested, there's no buildings there, but it stores a good amount of water and then allows that water, that peak in the flood, to move more slowly through the town so that the mill and the buildings are somewhat protected from the peaks of the flood. We're a little concerned now with Lake Manassas having been raised 5 feet. What was a flowing stream is now a backwater of the lake. And that has a few consequences. It changes the character of the stream. It changes the wildlife that we see in it. But it also changes the channel. Buckland is now the point where, when the river is carrying sediment, where it slows down and drops that sediment. And so over time, the channel is becoming less deep. And when a big flood comes through, there'll be less capacity to handle it, and therefore, I believe, more risk to the mill and to the houses in Buckland. During the drought that we had over the last several months, Lake Manassas was well below its current capacity. And so Broad Run was once again a free-flowing stream. And we had a waterfall here at the rocks beside the mill. Today the lake is full and the stream looks very different. We no longer have a waterfall on the rocks, but it's also changed the character of the stream in ways that you won't necessarily see right away. It's changed the wildlife, it's changed the fish in the stream. We used to have a variety of native fishes and game fishes, Now we have mostly carp coming up from the lake and keeping it muddy and preventing other fish from breeding in the stream. The banks are gradually eroding as the lake level rises and falls. Trees that were on the banks are now standing in water or are dying and falling into the water. We're losing capacity to carry floodwaters through this segment of the river. In the long run, a 100-year flood, instead of being down at my ankles, might be up to my waist. And the result would be damage to the mill, damage to the houses just downstream.
The largest reservoir is named Occoquan. 2 dams contain 8.5 billion gallons of water. The low dam was built over the site of the ancient swimming area called Mullet Hole. The high dam was built in the 1950s. By the 1980s, the high dam had to be raised another 2 feet to contain more water for the growing population. The reservoir receives its surface water from 4 sources. Spring-fed water flowing into 400 tributary streams is generally clean if located in undisturbed, undeveloped forests or wetlands. In 1989, 60% of Occoquan streams were in rural settings, supporting a high diversity of aquatic stream life. By the year 2020, only 20% of the streams are predicted to support this high diversity of life. By the year 2020, the percentage of streams not supporting life is expected to rise from 7% in 1989 to 40%. The cause of this change is urbanization and increased pavement and lawns. Groundwater infiltrates into the reservoir. 10,000 septic fields drain into the watershed with the potential to discharge into groundwater. Many septic fields are near the reservoir. Runoff from more than 2,300 miles of road, over 700 stream bridges, plus countless parking lots, driveways, sidewalks, rooftops, and lawns flow into the labyrinth of open channels. There are underground pipes as well, and stormwater ponds, all of this before discharging into tributary streams of the Occoquan or directly into the reservoir. The stormwater carries leaking byproducts of automobiles, such as oil and brake fluid, road applications, such as salt, fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides from lawns, as well as cleansers from car washing. Stormwater also carries the accumulated litter and cigarette butts thrown onto the pavement between the rain. The most regulated water source into the reservoir is the discharge from the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority. The treated water is the reservoir's cleanest and most reliable source. It may be the most analyzed water in the world by the Sewage Authority, by the Fairfax County Water Authority, the Occoquan Water Monitoring Laboratory, state scientists, and by numerous universities performing independent research on this unique reservoir. The independent projects often provide insight far beyond regulatory tests required by the government.
All natural waters have bacteria in them. As a microbiologist, I would always contend that bacteria are the most important cleansers of natural waters. Bacteria are present in all natural waters, whether it's flowing water or static water, and they are the most metabolically active organisms on Earth. They can eat almost anything. In a natural water system like the Occoquan, before it was dammed, there was a natural cleanup process going on. So one of the things we do is to look at water courses, whether they're impounded water or flowing water systems, to try to figure out what's natural, how many and what types of assemblages of bacteria are normal, and then we can tell when there's some abnormality, a contamination event that might give rise to blooms of bacteria and growth of even potentially pathogenic bacteria. In the Occoquan watershed, we were interested in investigating the abundances of bacteria and the bacterial assemblages from the headwaters of the reservoir itself down to the dam and below that. As we moved down through the Occoquan reservoir, the abundances of bacteria increased a little bit, but there really was not an excessive amount of bacteria in the surface waters of the reservoir at all. The abundances were perhaps in the range of 2 to 4 million cells per milliliter. By comparison, if we look at the Potomac River itself, there are far more bacteria. In fact, the abundances in the lower Potomac may exceed 50 million bacteria per milliliter.
Counting fish species, size, and health also indicate the health of the reservoir. Healthy water supports a wide diversity of fish species, and if fishing is controlled, there will be plenty of large fish swimming in the reservoir. Even higher on the food chain, birds of prey that feed on the fish are another indicator of water quality. Kingfisher, cormorant, osprey, blue heron, and the American bald eagle are tracked by scientists and volunteers to help us find out if the water is safe to drink. Only a few decades ago, the American bald eagle almost became extinct when undetected levels of DDT were absorbed into fish eaten by eagles. Thanks to strong political will and action, the eagles have returned. A new computer model uses data from the past 30 years to predict future water quality. In this sequence, changes in the amount of dissolved oxygen in the reservoir show as a wave of stormwater passing through the reservoir. Different colors illustrate varying oxygen levels. The vertical line is the submerged Ryan's Dam. The model shows the impact of water quality on the submerged dam. This model will help planners determine the impact of various developments on drinking water supplies. In 1996, the Audubon Naturalist Society commissioned a study correlating land development uses in the watershed to the drinking stream water. It concluded that the Occoquan policy depends too heavily upon technological remedies to reclaim polluted water, rather than preventing pollution through planning efforts. Fairfax County was the first Occoquan jurisdiction to take preventive land use and development planning action to reclaim the Occoquan's water quality.
I've been involved in preserving the Occoquan since my days 20 years ago on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, where we took 41,000 acres of land and downzoned it and were able to prove to the courts of Virginia that it protected the drinking water by holding down intense development. This is one of the smartest decisions I think this county has ever made. As a result of that, we have some of the cleanest water in the country for us to drink here in Prince William and Fairfax counties. And in addition to that, our water supply, our local supply, is plentiful at a time when many of the surrounding jurisdictions are suffering from drought and other water scarcities.
Similar zoning changes occurred in Prince William and Loudoun counties, but lessons have been learned from 20 years of downsizing experience. While massive developments were prevented, clear-cutting of trees was not. The lesson learned is that small preventive actions like tree conservation or low-impact development standards are far more cost-effective than paying later with expensive stormwater facilities and wastewater treatment plants. Enforcement of the Federal Clean Water Act may require implementation of low-impact design standards. The standards allow landowners to develop land at a profit, but they must maintain forested areas, reduce the amount of pavement and lawns, and use rainwater as a resource. The Northern Virginia Regional Commission coordinates regular meetings with all jurisdictions and stakeholders to find ways to meet these standards and improve Occoquan water quality. They navigate the complex technical and political challenges to maintain clean water in a rapidly urbanizing watershed through the Occoquan Technical Advisory Committee. By fostering cooperation among watershed jurisdictions, the Commission becomes a key player for improving the Occoquan Reservoir. The final job of reclaiming water for drinking rests with the Fairfax County Water Authority. Using state-of-the-art treatment technologies, the water is tested for 120 contaminants. The authority requires that they must be far below federal standards. Anticipating population growth, the authority is building a new plant with increased capacity. To meet the increased needs, the authority depends upon the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority to provide additional treated discharge.
A little more than 50 years ago, my husband got the first planning commission started in Fauquier County, and we have been fighting a relentless battle ever since to keep the countryside, to keep it this a predominantly farming county. A great many of us who live in Fauquier County have chosen to protect our land by giving easements, development easements to the state on that land, which means that we can never develop it. And this land that you're right over here, this Wildcat Mountain, a lot of this mountain has been given, and more is being given to the Nature Conservancy. And my place here, it's a small place, but we put an easement on it a number of years ago. And this county has more easemented land, eased land, than any other county, I think, in the state. I think there are close to 50,000 acres now that are protected by permanent easements that people have given. And then, of course, there's a lot of other land that is parkland, but we have a very strong easement program in this county, and we feel that this is the ultimate answer. And when I come up here and I look over these hills, it gives me great satisfaction because I think we've done a fairly good job.
And there are others helping to coordinate this effort.
Virginia Outdoors Foundation runs one of the largest conservation easement programs in the country, and we currently protect over 200,000 acres of land. In an effort to protect their watersheds, certain cities have been purchasing the land that feeds their water supply, like New York, city of Roanoke, and in the Bull Run Mountains here, we've worked through private donation of easements and purchase of some critical properties to protect this watershed. The conservation work on behalf of the Outdoors Foundation here in the Occoquan watershed has spanned 30 years and I believe is one of the best examples of private efforts working in concert with public programs to promote and conserve a critical environmental area.
Placing an easement on the property encourages landowners to do more.
We live on Cedar Run. We have about a half a mile of frontage on Cedar Run, and it's all woodland. It is just a beautiful, beautiful woodland glade along the river. The house sits in the middle of 422 acres. My husband and I bought this place back in 1965, and when we first saw it, we drove up the driveway, and it seemed like somebody had lived here for a long time. And sure enough, somebody has lived here since, I think, 1757, and of course the Native Americans before that. The reason we put our land in easement was because we wanted to make sure that it would be forever protected. And we talked about it for a long time, and it was a big decision. There's never been a moment that I've looked back, and I know that Julia never looked back and regretted it, because we know that it will be protected forever. We started a fund, it's called the Cedar Run Conservation Fund, to preserve the watershed of Cedar Run. We're hoping to get a number of easements, and we hope to purchase development rights along the stream. We're encouraging the riparian buffers at the federal government. They have a creep and a crep program that pay farmers and to preserve the stream banks, and also to plant the stream banks, as well as to fence off cattle and do watering troughs, etc., rather than having them go right into the stream. Then we also have an education program, and to educate the landowners along Cedar Run to help them protect Cedar Run, to do something about the buffers, as well as hopefully we'll get some easements and purchase development rights of those people who can't give easements.
Local jurisdictions use different processes to protect land adjacent to the reservoir. Fairfax County governs the northern border of the reservoir. The county assisted the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority to purchase and manage the northern shore. The result is a successfully maintained forested buffer, interrupted only by the development of recreational centers. the buffers protect the reservoir from polluted stormwater and groundwater drainage. The center provides an opportunity for the public to experience an environment that would have been lost if the land were privately developed. Fishing is a popular activity at Fountainhead Regional Park. People come from all over to fish one of the area's best lakes for largemouth bass and crappie. And competitive rowing is taken to a higher level at the Sandy Run Regional Park. From here, both beginners and Olympic athletes practice and compete in some of the nation's top races. Universities from as far away as New England come to the Occoquan to practice on one of the finest stretches of water in the East Coast. Prince William County limited development along the shores, but did so too late to protect against some high-density development. And the county was able to purchase only a small portion of the shoreline. To further prevent development encroachment in environmentally sensitive areas, a growing number of individuals are becoming active in the process.
I'm a frequent recreational user of the Occoquan, and I'm also an overseer for sections of the Bull Run Occoquan Trail. I've been in a position to observe the detrimental effects of soil disturbance and tree and vegetation removal. Our family has owned this property for over 30 years. We have determined there is a government program that will assist us for affordable ownership through tax incentives. We have therefore set this property aside to be used as a forest. I'm a member of the board of the Prince William Conservation Alliance. I support the Alliance in their educational and conservation efforts. The Alliance also works with the Prince William County government in efforts to instill measures to protect this important resource, the Occoquan.
Below the reservoir on the Prince William County side, most of the riverbank is private property. In the town of Occoquan, there's currently little public access to the river. But there is a public-private effort to build a river walk that will invite people to the river.
It's a beautiful source of the bird life, and we are a bird sanctuary. So the birds are going to be a high priority for anybody coming down here, since this is what they will see. The river walk will bring people closer to the water. The water is very relaxing and soothing, and I think it would take a lot of the stress out of their lives than, their day-to-day, bumper-to-bumper traffic. This gives them a piece of the past. Our town started as a river town, and this will bring back part of our history into the present, so people can get a feel what it is.
But water quality at the town of Occoquan starts many miles away in the mountains of the rural crescent.
Our mission is to protect the Bull Run Mountain Natural Area by managing the public's access and educating children and adults on the cultural, ecological, and historical heritage of this preserve, as well as other open space communities. We are one of many non-governmental organizations in the Occoquan watershed that, through education, protect our natural resources by encouraging a land ethic.
Since the 1970s, a small group of technical professionals from the Fairfax County Water Authority, the Upper Occoquan Sewage Authority, the Occoquan Water Monitoring Laboratory, and the Northern Virginia Regional Commission have devoted their professional careers to create, build, and manage a system that reclaims wastewater and produces the cleanest, most reliable, and least expensive drinking water in the metropolitan Washington area. They have successfully managed a system that is unique in the United States. But the next generation of managers will face monumental technological challenges, not just to continue reclaiming wastewater, but to reclaim stormwater and groundwater runoff, and settle air pollution from a newly urbanized watershed. To reclaim natural, clean sources of water once abundant in the watershed is not just a technological challenge, it will require a change in our understanding and commitment. To reclaim the childhood adventures of mullet holes that created bold, adventurous adults will take a change in our collective vision. And to reclaim a deeper connection to these waters will take a change of heart.
Say way, way in the